Right, chapter 4, or scroll 4. Before we begin, I was interested in the name of the slave dealer, so I went to the glossary at the back, and it says there that the original Latin Venelicius for Venelicius's name, I'm pronouncing it Venelicius, in Latin it would have been Venelicius. The name actually means slave dealer in Latin, which I wasn't aware of till I had a little look. The other thing about the name that I rather like is that it starts with the word venal, and venal's a word that we have in English which means somebody who is corrupt, who you can't trust, who might cheat you. And so, you know, Venelicius is very definitely a venal person. He is untrustworthy. Anyway, scroll number 4. The price tag around the slave girl's neck read 600, but now Venelicius was asking for 7. Flavia wanted to shout out that it wasn't fair. Instead, she bit her lip and swallowed her protest. Tears blurred her vision. She'd been so close to saving the girl, so close to having someone her own age to be with, so close to... Very well, she heard her father say in a matter-of-fact voice. Here you are. Flavia did not dare break the spell by looking. She shut her eyes tight and held her breath. A minute later, she heard the slave dealer call out mockingly, I hope she serves you well, Captain. Flavia opened her eyes and peeked around the column. Her father was moving through the crowd, and the girl was with him. Flavia ran to meet them. Pater, the extra 100 sesterces. The gold in my bag was only worth 600. I paid the extra amount. But so much, Pater. You're forgetting that today is special. Happy birthday, my dear. Flavia threw her arms round her father and hugged him tightly. She wanted to hug the girl too and tell her that everything was going to be all right now. But something about the girl's empty look stopped her. Instead, Flavia slipped off her cloak and gently wrapped it around the girl's naked body. Then they took her home. Later that morning, Flavia made an important discovery. The slave girl she had bought spoke no Latin and only a little Greek. The girl had said nothing on the way home, or when Flavia had bathed the sores on her neck with a sea sponge and applied some of Mordecai's soothing aloe balm. But after Flavia had taken her up to her bedroom and dressed her in a soft yellow tunic, the girl had looked up timidly at Flavia and recited in a faltering voice, Greetings, my name is Nubia. How may I please you? Hello, Nubia. I'm Flavia Gemina, daughter of Marcus Flavius Geminus, sea captain. Nubia looked at her blankly and then repeated, Greetings, my name is Nubia. How may I please you? Flavia realised the girl didn't understand the words she was reciting. She probably didn't know any Latin at all. And the name Nubia makes me think she might be Nubian. She might be from that area of Africa. And it might not really be her name at all. Flavia, said Flavia slowly, pointing at herself. I am Flavia. Flavia, repeated Nubia haltingly. Yes. Are you hungry, Nubia? Nubia looked blank. Flavia opened her mouth and pointed inside. The girl stared back with horror. Flavia pretended to chew something. Nubia's eyes at this lit up, and she nodded. Come on then, let's go down to the kitchen and see what Alma is cooking. Flavia quite quickly reached for Nubia's hand, but the girl drew back with a frightened expression. Flavia remembered that when she first got Scuto as a puppy, he also cringed at any sudden movement. Her father said it was because he had been beaten. "Don't be afraid. Come," said Flavia, and moved slowly towards the doorway of her bedroom. Nubia followed hesitantly as they went down the wooden stairs, past the sunny garden, and into the small kitchen. Alma, Flavia's former nursemaid, had recently taken over kitchen duties. The previous cook, Gusto, had died shopping for leeks in the forum when a donkey kicked him in the head. Alma had proved to be an excellent cook and was daily growing plumper from sampling her own recipes. She was tasting something at that very moment, leaning over the glowing ashes on the kitchen hearth with a spoon half poised above a steaming pan. Flavia greeted her and then introduced Nubia. "Alma, this is Nubia. Nubia, this is Alma. She used to be my nurse." "Welcome, Nubia," beamed the cook. Normally she would have thrown her arms around such a sad-looking creature and given her a warm embrace, but she had been alerted to treat the new slave gently. Even Scuto had been shut away in the storeroom for the time being. "I'm just cooking your birthday dinner," said Alma, "so I can't stop to chat. But I've prepared some fruit and bread. Take it into the garden." She handed Flavia a platter laid out with various fruits and a flat, round loaf of bread. Nubia pointed to a date and said "date" very softly in Greek. "Yes, that's the Greek word for date," said Flavia. "Do you understand Greek? Do you want a date?" And then in Greek she said, "Take one." Nubia looked at her in awe and disbelief. Slowly, she reached out a hand and took a date. She closed her eyes as she ate it, and a look of pure delight passed over her lovely face. Just reminds me of when we tried the foods that we might have had from Egypt, and one or two of you tried the figs and the dates, and I don't remember looks of pure delight being seen on many faces. "Have much?" Flavia's Greek was not very fluent. She had only been studying it for 2 years. Now she wished she had worked harder at it. "Have big date," she tried again. Nubia understood and solemnly took another date. "Let's go garden," said Flavia, when she had remembered the Greek word for garden. She led the way to her favourite seat by the fountain. Nubia stared in amazement at the spout of water shooting up from the copper pipe in the centre of the marble basin. Slowly she put her finger in it, then quickly withdrew it as if she had been burned. "Water," she said in Greek, and then, "I drink?" "Yes, you can drink it," cried Flavia in delight, and demonstrated the fact. Nubia drank, too, for a long time, and then turned back to the plate. They sat on the marble bench, and together they named the foods: bread, date, peach, grapes, apples. Then Nubia sat down to eating in earnest. She had 2 pieces of bread, a bunch of grapes, half an apple, and a whole peach. Finally, she ate up every date on the plate. "You like dates?" said Flavia. "Yes, like dates," replied Nubia, with her mouth quite full. "Better stop. Enough," said Flavia in Greek. And then, reverting to Latin, "I'm having a birthday dinner party in a few hours, and there will be lots of delicious food. Jonathan from next door is coming, and his father Mordecai, and his sister Miriam, and my father, of course. And you're coming too, so don't eat too much." Nubia gazed solemnly at Flavia. "Lots more later good food," said Flavia in Greek with a sigh, and wished again that she had paid more attention during lessons with her tutor, Aristo. Just have a quick sip. Flavia was determined that her birthday dinner party would be a success. Her plan was to have Nubia recline next to Miriam, who seemed so quiet and gentle. She herself would lie on the same couch as Jonathan, and her father and Mordecai would take the third couch. "No," said her father firmly. "I'm afraid it's no good." "Why not, Pater?" "First of all, you're not old enough to recline at dinner yet." Reclining is lying down, which is something that the Romans would do to eat. Flavia started to protest, but he held up his hand and smiled. "If it were just a family gathering, I would let you recline. But it's not. Furthermore, you told me our next-door neighbours are foreigners. From Judea, was it?" Flavia nodded. "Well, they might not feel comfortable reclining. Better to sit, don't you think, my little owl?" He ruffled her hair affectionately. "Yes, Pater," she sighed. "Also," said Captain Geminus, "do you know that when a mistress invites her slave to recline, it means she is granting that slave her freedom?" Flavia shook her head. "At least wait until Nubia has learned enough Latin to find her way around Ostia before you set her free," he said with a smile. So Flavia modified her plan and her seating arrangement. The six of them sat around a large oval table which Caudex and her father had carried in from the atrium. Flavia seated Nubia next to Miriam and was glad to see Jonathan's sister gave the African girl a warm smile. When her guests were seated, Flavia handed out garlands of ivy and violets, which she had made herself. Mordecai balanced his garland on top of his white turban and didn't seem to mind when Jonathan and Flavia giggled at him. Captain Geminus poured the wine, well watered for the children, and they all toasted Flavia's health. Nubia wrinkled her pretty nose when she first sipped the wine, but soon took another sip. After the toast, there was an awkward silence. The doctor sat stiffly in a green silk caftan, sort of like a robe, while her father fiddled with the folds of his toga. Flavia glanced anxiously towards the kitchen, wondering what was keeping Alma. Jonathan whistled a little tune under his breath, and then winked at Flavia. Finally, Alma proudly carried in the first course and set it on the table. Sea snails fried in olive oil, garlic and pepper. The snails had been placed back in their shells, and Alma handed each diner a special spoon with a small hook at one end to extract the snail. "Are we permitted to eat these, Father?" whispered Jonathan, gazing in dismay at the creatures. "God has made all things clean," his father murmured, and politely took a snail. Flavia showed Jonathan how to extract a snail, and then watched as he gingerly picked up one of the shells between finger and thumb and hooked out its contents. He paused to examine it. The snail was small and twisted and rubbery and brown. Jonathan closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and put it in his mouth. He chewed. He opened his eyes. He smiled. He beamed, and eagerly finished off the rest. Under the stern gaze of her father, Miriam also made a brave attempt. Nubia, imitating Flavia to see how it was done, ate up every snail on her plate. Jonathan wiped his hands on his tunic, which already had a dribble of garlic oil down the front. Then he drained his wine cup with a smack of his lips. Nubia, watching him carefully, also wiped her hands on her tunic and smacked as she drained her wine cup. Flavia smiled. "For our next course, we're having dormice stuffed with chopped sow's udders," she announced brightly. Mordecai and his children froze in horror. Nubia looked blank. Flavia, said her father with a warning look. Just joking, giggled Flavia. My favourite food is really roast chicken. You do like roast chicken, don't you? After that, the party perked up nicely. Everyone relaxed and laughed and ate up their roast chicken and told stories about the most revolting food they'd ever been offered. Mordecai had once found a sheep's eyeball in his stew while dining with a camel trader in Judea. Flavia's father had devoured a delicious fish soup in the port of Massilia and discovered a rotten fish head down at the bottom of his bowl. Just last week, Miriam had deeply offended her host by refusing to eat 3 roast quail whose tiny charred heads dangled woefully. Quail are a tiny little bird. And Flavia swore she knew a baker who added chalk and sand to his flour in order to cut costs. But Jonathan's experience beat them all. Once, when chewing a mouthful of meat pie bought from a street vendor in Rome, his tongue had encountered something tough and gristly. Pulling it out of his mouth to inspect it, he had discovered, to his horror, that it was the tip of somebody's finger. Everyone groaned and pushed their plates away. Luckily, they had finished the main course. Captain Geminus refilled empty wine cups, and presently Alma came in with the dessert course, dates and slices of sugary pink watermelon. Jonathan, who was becoming slightly tipsy, pretended that 2 dates were his eyes and a slice of watermelon his grinning mouth. Flavia giggled, and Nubia smiled for the first time. Encouraged by the success of this antic, Jonathan stuck a leftover snail up each nostril. Flavia snorted with laughter, Nubia giggled, and Miriam rolled her eyes. Mordecai cleared his throat. With your permission, I think it's time for us to take our leave, he said, with a significant glance at his son. But first, happy birthday, Flavia. This is from us all. He reached under his chair and brought out a fat leather cylinder tied with a scarlet ribbon. Flavia knew immediately that it was a scroll case. With excited fingers, she opened the leather top and pulled out one of the scrolls inside. It's not new, I'm afraid, said Mordecai in his accented voice. To tell the truth, I have 2 sets, so I thought I could spare this one. Flavia's eyes opened wide with delight as she unrolled the papyrus. It's the Aeneid! It's the very thing I wanted! And look at the beautiful illustrations! Everyone pushed back their chairs and crowded around to look at the scroll and admire the pictures. Flavia, prompted her father. What do you say? Oh, thank you, Dr. Mordecai. Jonathan, Miriam, it's such a generous gift. Thank you. And then, look, Nubia, I can help you learn Latin by reading this story to you. But Nubia was not in her chair. She had vanished.